Okay, everybody, the time has finally come. We're going to discuss with one of the two key players in the '80s Tremolo Wars just exactly what happened from his perspective. But Gary's got a little something he'd like to say about Floyd D. Rose, the person, first. So go ahead, Gary.
Well, all I got to say is that I consider Floyd a friend of mine, and we're both Americans. We're here in the same country, and we've always talked about a lot of things. And I've got great respect for the fact that Floyd is the one that taught us all about double locking, and he got the patents to do that, and he had the right to do whatever he could do to sell his stuff. He just took a different way to do it, and that was by licensing people throughout the world. And I decided that, well, I was going to manufacture everything right here in the U.S., and that's basically the difference. And this thing about Tremolo Wars, I'd invite Floyd or whomever to sit right here at this table with us, and we could have I think, a very meaningful conversation about a whole lot of stuff, because this happened a long time ago.
This is opening a conversation here, so it's not meant to be pointing fingers and telling somebody to go jump in a lake.
I think it also that'll be a little bit provocative, and I think that's good.
I agree, but the important thing to me here is that I want everybody to realize that if your preference is Floyd Rose, that we don't see that as an attack, and we're not going to attack anybody back. That's not our style here. We try to be as all inclusive as possible, and really, what we do here, it's much smaller than Floyd Rose, but we're really focused on doing as much as we can for the artist. That being said, there's a whole lot of this. If you guys can, please make it all the way through. Come back, watch it again, whatever, because we got a lot to cover here. One last thing, I'm going to put all of the comments to date of us doing this, whether we use them or not, into a file on the Kahler Facebook page. You're all welcome to go and look at these things completely and totally unedited, unaltered in any way. All right, here we go. Very first comment I picked out on purpose because it's from Gil Carlson. Gil Carlson is an expert on Floyd Rose. He is a very talented luthier, and as such, I wanted to start off with him. He makes a lot of great points, and here we go. Yep. Eddie Van Halen, followed by Lynch, DeMartini, etc. I've owned a few guitars with Kahlers, and to me they felt like the lesser trem. The top mount and the Pro are single locking at the nut. The string claws seem less stable than the locking saddles of the Floyd. The claws allow the string ball to move when the arm is pressed down, unlike the Floyd saddles that lock the string in place, keeping the tuning stability more stable. The Kahlers do not have more adjustability over the Floyd. Oh. The Kahlers do have more adjustability over the Floyd, which can be daunting to some. The Floyds are easier to adjust and set up. The Kahler 2-point, like the Spider, etc., have a thinner, lighter, smaller split in the sustain blocks, which reduce the tone and sustain to make the guitar brighter due to the low mass of the blocks. The Floyd blocks are one piece and bigger and heavier, which makes the trem a little heavier but increases sustain over the Kahler. The steel and brass blocks of the Floyd are solid and they have more mass over the Kahler's zinc, smaller split sustain blocks. The Floyd saddles eliminate the risk of the ball end winding, coming undone, and having the string just lose its tuning. Although the fine tuners on the Flyer and the Pro make it easier for fine adjustments in tuning over the Floyd's coarser threaded fine tuners. I will make this through this. Overall, the aspects of the Floyd just seem to make it easier to adjust and keep the tuning more stable while having better sustain and more presence overall tone of the guitar due to its larger mass and more solid feel in materials. I got a couple things I want to say about this. I'm sure you do too, Gary. First off, I find the Kahler to be infinitely more adjustable and easier to adjust. You can adjust your string spacing, you can adjust your radius without having to shim the thing. You can do all kinds of other stuff like that. The next thing is if we're talking about a low mass zinc block, that is 2 of the 3 fulcrums, right? 2 of the 3? No, 2 of the 4 fulcrums.
Okay.
Okay, so the first one would be the 2500, and we're not going to spend any time on that right now because it's going to come up later. The next one would be the Spider. The next one would be the Killer, and then finally the Stealer. The Stealer and the Floyd are so close that the block argument goes right out the window. In fact, our Stealer comes with 4 block options, and they've got it just as much brass as anything else. And the auto latch option will actually increase your resonance and sustain. This right here is a raw Spider block. Now, the Spider, just like the Killer and the 2500, the block is not removable. Now, that is what would you say this is? This is a grade of zinc. This is probably what, Zammix 7?
Yeah, I believe that's what it is. 7.
Okay, so zinc comes in different grades, and a 7 is that's pretty good. That's
it's one of the finer grades.
Now, the plate and the block on this Low Pro Edge, they're made out of zinc too. Maybe it's Zammix 7, maybe it's Zammix 2. Who knows? I don't know. Here is an Ibanez Edge plate made out of zinc, and right there you can see this is a common problem with the Ibanez Edge. And the Ibanez Edge is one of my favorite bridges. This zinc stuff breaks off. These so-called replaceable knife edges are, I don't think they're user serviceable replaceable at all. So the zinc thing, Kahler's not the only one. However,
we have replaceable on the Spider.
Oh yeah, the Spider, yeah, they are actually replaceable knife edges that you can remove and replace with a screw. The Killer right here, though, this is not zinc. There's no zinc in this at all, is there?
No, it's all well in the block and the plate. That's all steel.
Steel with. Was it brass?
Copper infiltrated.
Copper infiltrated. So this is sintered metal.
That's right.
So
sintered.
Sintered metal is a process that is so complicated we're not going to get into it. But in all metals, on a molecular level, they have voids, and so. To fill these voids, there was actually a copper infusion, and so this is steel, and that's why it doesn't have replaceable knife edges, because they are steel. They don't need to be replaced.
And it's hardened.
That's pretty much all I got. Gary, you got anything you'd like to say?
First of all, anybody and everybody is entitled to their own opinion of things, and I believe he's done a good job of outlining his thoughts and views, and I don't agree with everything he says there, but I think it's great that he can say what he has to say. We did a really good job here at Kahler on trying to do the right thing and make it right, particularly in that Killer that was so expensive to make. I had to stop making it, and because it was just so damn expensive. On the other hand, again, we made everything regarding to that here in the United States under license. And so for a period of time, that worked out pretty good.
Yeah, actually. So anyway, and once again, I just want to say, Gil actually very well thought out points. And I have done a lot of interacting with Gil online, and the guy knows his stuff. He is spot on. I got a lot of respect for Gil. So there we go. All right, next comment. I've used both, love them both. Just like using them for different reasons, quality was excellent on both. So that to me seems like a reasonable person.
Well, they are different, the fulcrum and the cam, and it depends on how you feel about it and what it is you want. You're the creator, you're the artist, and that's a neat comment.
Yeah, no, I like it. I've been an OFR user, OFR for those that don't know, Original Floyd Rose user for more than 40 years. What I dislike about the Kaler is it just had no resistance and too light a touch and felt and sounded flimsy to me. Whereas the Floyd was more stable and took more effort to move it, and it would just make your guitar roar and scream, particularly like the tuning stability on the Floyd better as well. My 2 cents. Okay, as a tech, I want to address this right now and say that the Kaler, yes, it has a much lighter feel by design. However, if you change the springs from the regular springs to the heavy springs, then all of a sudden it starts to feel like a fulcrum. And then there's also this heavy bar that can go in and take the place of the regular bar, and it will feel a lot more like a fulcrum. Anything to add on that one, Gary?
No, I think that's true. It does. And David Schinkel, who's one of our endorsers,
right,
uses a quarter arm and the heavy springs as well. He has a special bend for it and all of that, and he prefers the cam for his reasons. So there you go.
So the next comment says, the material used on the Kaler is not so consistent than a Floyd Rose. Also, the way it sounds when turning up and down, Kaler sounds more like a slide. Floyd sounds more like a motorbike. Okay.
What does that mean?
What does that mean? Okay, well, you know what? Kaler sounds more like a slide. Floyd sounds more like a motorbike. Respectfully, I have to disagree. I think that if you are talking about a properly set up Floyd and a properly set up Kaler, if you're comparing them immediately right next to each other with no mix, no band behind, then maybe you'd be able to tell a difference just from the bridge. But if you're talking about in a band situation where everybody's got everything turned up to 11 and the guitars are distorted and this and that, if it's properly set up, they're going to sound pretty much the same. The material used is not so consistent than the Floyd Rose. That's what bothers me.
No, I disagree with that. Floyd Roses, what they are made by many different people.
Yes.
And I can tell you the Kalers are made here. And so we're very consistent on substrates and materials.
Yeah. So the Kaler is super consistent. As far as I know, you have only ever outsourced one thing ever, and that's the X-Drum. Am I missing anything?
Well, that was in 2013 when I had a manufacturer in Asia make some things, and then we discontinued it after 3 years.
Something that I want to point out, too, is that a lot of times people will see a bridge that doesn't fall into what they're used to seeing, and they'll immediately think that it's a Kaler. And you know what? They do it the opposite way, too. They'll see a Jackson JT6 and say that it's a Floyd Rose, or they'll see Ibanez Edge or whatever, and they'll say that it's a Floyd Rose. It is not. They are different. But I got two counterfeits sitting right there. Okay, can you hand those to me? This is an AccuTune 1. This is an AccuTune 2. The AccuTune 1 is obviously a colossal fake. And something that's really weird about the AccuTune 1, if you flip it over, look at where the springs are. That doesn't make any sense at all. Right?
Well, it's different.
Well, right. And this also is something that was sort of didn't need to get to cease and desist, but it sure could have went there. This right here, the AccuTune 2, is actually a fulcrum. It's not a cam. This one is a cam. This one's a fulcrum, but it's kind of got a Kaler look to it. You will see these for sale all the time on eBay, Reverb, and they will say something like pre-Kaler prototype, blah, 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 blah. Kaler doesn't have anything to do with this piece of garbage bridge, and this thing is a piece of garbage. The whole thing is zinc. This thing right here is supposed to be straight, but I've never seen a straight one. They always bend because the metal's too weak. The front of it's weak and everything and whatever else. And a lot of times people think that these two absolute hunks of shit, I'm sorry, guys, but these are garbage budget bridges that went on extremely budget guitars. The two in particular does not hold up. And I think, Gary, that your company takes a real beating for the AccuTune 2 in particular.
Well, we get calls all the time for parts for many different copies of our bridges. That only represents two of them. And all I can say is, like, if they want string hooks or fine tuners or rollers or whatever, everything is in metric. Mm-hmm. Nothing fits for most of that. And the end user thinks that's a license or something, like what Floyd Rose does. So they're calling us for parts constantly. And none of our parts will fit because ours are all SAE and American measurements. Mm-hmm. And they're not metric and foreign measurements. Now, I know the folks that made those and the guitar factories that used it thought, well, they have a right to do it until they don't. But they did it, and it takes tens of thousands of dollars to stop anybody from using it. So they went ahead and did it. And, well, that's life, I guess, in a big city.
Now, I don't think that you ever answered the question, or I wasn't paying attention. Anything other than the X-Trem that was a Kahler product, have you ever had anything else made overseas?
Well, part of the guts for the hybrid line,
okay,
we made there because some of the guts for the X-Trem are the same. So yes, we did.
Okay,
we made that. But then I stopped it in 2013. We had as many tremolos going out the back door as was going out the front door, so to speak. Now, that was not my manufacturer. That was the people we were selling to in Asia. They would buy more than they had guitars to make, and then they would sell them on eBay and everything else.
I always believed there were several factors. First was reliability. A double locking trem was needed in the 80s because it was all about deep dives. Second was simplicity. The design of the Kahler was more complicated, whereas the Floyd is much simpler. Easy to fully disassemble, clean, put back together, change a string. Change a string gauge only needs a couple screw turns to balance. And third, again, just my opinion, sheer proliferation of the Floyd. They came stock on the number one guitar brand of the 80s, the Kramer. They were endorsing every 80s shredder they could find, including the legend Eddie Van Halen. This one has some pretty good stuff in here. Now, the double locking thing, Floyd Rose actually held a patent on double locking, so you couldn't do it, right?
Look, Floyd Rose held a patent, and there was no way that we could lock it at the bridge because we honored his patent. And so basically we said, look, yes, the balls are going to be held in place with a string hook, just the way Gibson did. And but we're going to have fine tuning to go with that. And so the fine tuning part of it would offset part of the thing of the ball moving, and it would give you more dimension on the string. Because first of all, if you're going to lock it off on both sides, you got to have fine tuning somewhere, because when you put that string in place, you lock it on both ends. The original Floyd Rose did not have fine tuning, which created a problem. So here was the dilemma. Floyd Rose had double locking on both ends, and I had fine tuning on mine without able to lock it at the bridge, even on a cam. Well, maybe we could have pushed the deal there, but I didn't want to push it because I honor patents. So Floyd Rose doesn't have fine tuning way back then, and I do. He has double locking, and I don't. So you got two different kinds of bridges.
Floyd Rose started somewhere around 77, 78, somewhere like that. And originally it was, pretty much all about just double locking. There were no fine tuners, but there was a locking nut. Now,
who manufactured that piece?
As far as I know, Floyd made the first one in his garage or his basement. Rumor has it, but there's no actual reliable source. The best one I found is this guy. He's got a channel called the Guitar Historical Archives, and that guy really knows his stuff. Now, I will say this: the very first time we ever see a Kahler is in 1983 when they went on to Gibson's. That is the first, right?
Well, it was the first production run.
Right.
Before that, I'd been working with
Bernie and Grover,
B.C. Rich, Orville, right, and the Jacksons. Before that, but the first quantity order came from Gibson.
They were cataloged in 1983. And that means that the fine tuners were developed in 82. And one day in the future, you can tell the story of how back when you were in university, you noticed the guitar player that was having a hard time keeping his guitar in tune. As far as I can tell, Fernandez was the first place to mass produce the Floyd Rose. They did the FRT3, which was a lot like the original Floyd Rose, and then they did a single locking one called the FRT2. Eddie Van Halen started endorsing Kramer, and at the time, Kramer had the Rockinger on it. And they actually called it the Eddie Van Halen Rockinger or the Eddie Van Halen Tremolo. Petzolot actually knows a lot more about this because Petzolot made a bridge that Eddie Van Halen bought a couple from him. Petzolot could probably clarify this for us.
Well, that was before David come to work.
Yes, this is before Dave Petzolot came here. Floyd apparently went up, saw the Kramer thing, and was like, wow, this is really great. Congratulations. By the way, I think that my bridge is better. Now, that's just pure speculation on my part, but Dave could maybe clear that up a little bit. And at the same time, now, again, this is speculation. It's made by Fernandez, which is a guitar company. And so Schaller started making them too. But for a while there, Schaller and Fernandez both made the Floyd Rose. Then the FRT4 was the first one with fine tuners at Eddie Van Halen's urging, and he didn't like where they were, so then they came up with the FRT5, which is now what we know of as the 1984 Floyd Rose. That was an awful lot. Hopefully that covered everything here, but if not, we'll get into it a bit.
Could I say also that if the Floyd Rose group or anyone disagrees, please let us know.
Oh my God, please, yeah.
Yeah, and we'll correct it if we're wrong. We mean no harm to Floyd Rose. We're competitors, yeah, we are, but let me tell you, there's a lot of work went in here on both sides, both Kahler's side as well as the Floyd Rose side, to bring it to market and do it right.
I got nothing but love for Floyd Rose. I mean, my...
Now, I don't know if you need to have love for him, for God's sakes.
Now, I'm talking about the bridge, not the person.
Okay.
But
your love's supposed to be here, man.
Well, it is, and you know, here's the thing. Now, while I might have drove Floyd's car and I might have one of his 3-space rack drawers, you know, I've never met the man, so...
Well, he's a decent guy. And all I can say is that we're here again, we're all in this together. We really are. And I don't mean any ill towards anybody here. All we're trying to do is answer these questions that people want to know about. The
entire reason that I'm here is because, you know, I really love this stuff. I believe in this particular bridge. And you know what? Floyd Rose didn't say, why don't you come work for me? But Gary Kahler did.
One of the main reasons, you know, you're not here talking 100% about Kahler because you're talking about bridges. And that's the thing I liked about you on your own podcast when I watched it a couple of times out of Louisiana, for God's sakes. And now you're quite a historian. You've read all the books that have been written about all these different guitar factories. I think you probably know about Fender and Ibanez more than anybody else I know.
You need to get out more.
Well, the history and the education, I think, is important behind us. All we're trying to do is do the best we can in trying to say we believe this is a history, and Floyd isn't here to correct anything you might say. So he certainly get a hold of me. I think he has my phone number. Just call me. Anyway, and we'll certainly correct that. But we mean well in what we're saying here.
Yes, I am actually somebody who is all about everything guitar that was ever made, and that's because I'm a Gen X kid that was raised on hose water and neglect, and the only thing that never let me down was my guitar. And you know what? I was of very limited means too, so I couldn't buy every guitar that I wanted, but I could sure get the free catalogs, and I just sat there and studied up, and I'm just the biggest guitar geek I know. This is a sad one right here. I ruined my Ibanez Destroyer with a Kahler tremolo. The defect was in the rollers. It killed the sustain. I used a Floyd Rose ever since, and they sound way better. As a tech, I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that your guitar was ruined when a different bridge was put in. However, it is my belief that it wasn't the bridge, it was probably the installation. Phil Collen of Def Leppard played a Kahler for a real long time on his Ibanez Destroyer. And
one of the very first people to do that.
Yeah, and you know what? It sounded amazing. So I'm sorry, buddy. That sounds to me like a bad install or a bad setup. Once again, tragic. I own an Ibanez Destroyer. I absolutely love it.
We're airing this because we're trying to air the good and the bad.
Yes.
And if it's bad, we're really here to find out why and how we can improve what we do. This isn't good for the man.
No. And I mean, we picked 40 of of all the submissions, and you guys, thank you, by the way, too. We only had a handful of people who were real assholes about it, and
I think they went both ways.
Oh yeah,
against Kahler and against Floyd. Right?
Oh yeah, there were some that were pretty vicious against Floyd. I think we're about to discuss a very sore topic here. I got my first and last Kahler on a Charvel Model 2. I already know what that one that is. It can only be one. It was the single locking one. Well, they're all single locking except for 3 of them. Okay. Forget the model number or the name. Well, it was the 2500. That bridge felt really good to use, very smooth, the motion, palm muting. The problem was the metal it was made out of. The fine tuners could easily rip themselves off if you adjusted them too far. Further, the saddles had these little tabs on the bottom to lock the intonation in place. Those things would break off if you looked at them wrong. I think that if Kahler had used better materials, they could have been amazing. But since quality was optional, they failed. Quality was optional. It wasn't optional. It was not optional. And Gary's going to explain why. But I'm going to show you guys. I just happen to have 3. And I'm kind of expecting Gary to cringe over here because this is not his favorite bridge. Here is version 1 of the 2500. This is a 100% zinc frame and block, correct?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. Now, there is a problem with using zinc for where your knife edges are going to be. That is a real big problem that originally they thought, oh, well, our steel inserts will just dig in and that'll be great. Well, it wasn't great, but they sure did dig in. So
let me make a comment about that.
Please.
Now, that's 100% zinc.
Yes.
And so when we say it wasn't the inserts that dug in, we went to a different system. We were instead of using the knife on the plate,
right,
we got a knife bolt.
Right.
And so then that edge of that bolt was supposed to, the technical name is to seat.
To seat, right.
Into the zinc. And therefore, it would actually make it stronger. Now, I paid great money for that analytical view. And we decided, okay, we can do that. We can make the price point that the OEM wanted at that time by doing it. It happens that that did not work as slick as we thought. So then later we had to come up with the next bridge.
Oh, and by the way, those the knife edge on the screw itself too. That is why almost everybody complains about the Spider, because they try to put the thing in there like it's a Floyd Rose. That's not the way it's designed, and then it won't move. And they go like, "This thing won't move. It's a piece of crap." Well, it's set up wrong. Well, I know how to set up a bridge. I've been doing. You've been setting up Floyd Roses, not Spiders.
The knife of the bolt has to go into the groove.
It has to.
Into the groove.
Yes.
Not the knife of the plate going into the groove of the post.
Yes. So here's the thing, is that you can't really make out on this one, but I can show you with this right here. You guys actually machined this part out and then drilled 2 holes, tapped them, and had a steel thing that went on here, but that did not save this back part here where they're talking about the tuners. Now, you guys need to understand, this is a conversation that we've known we've had to have, but we don't want to talk about it because it's unpleasant, this thing.
No, it isn't that it's unpleasant. It's a fact. I mean, I think as John here has made a good point.
Yes.
You know, from time to time, we're not perfect. We don't make everything 100%, except once in a while, we'll go along with technical aspects, progressive aspects that we think are really going to work, and they don't, as well as they should. So we had to take the tool that was making that frame, completely redo it,
Yep.
So that we could put a steel insert in the front of it, and that's what we did. And so I made the steel insert, that at extra expense, and that's sintered metal hardened to RC60, and that part of it then worked. But now you can go ahead and address the back of it.
Problem here is that these parts right here that the fine tuner goes into, if you go, because these are zinc too, correct?
Yes.
Now, you did suggest to the OEM to make this out of a different material.
Yeah, we wanted to make it out of steel, but here again, we're trying to compete with offshore.
Yes.
And the problem in doing that, trying to keep the same price points, and as a result, we had to make a certain price point or we couldn't sell it. And frankly, in the middle 80s, well, you make 45,000 bridges in a run. The fact is that they either buy it or they don't buy it. Yep. In this case, they bought it, and that's what it is.
Somebody somewhere in here, if we passed it or not, had said something about the rollers freezing. A couple of the rollers on here are freezing. That's a maintenance thing.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with
the quality. But this bridge right here, if you don't sit here and try to force this, this would probably be a fine bridge. Once you force it to the point where you bend it, it's over. I personally would love it if we made steel ones of these to go in here and replace that and just see. But that would be so expensive that it's just never going to happen.
Well, that part of it, and that bridge is, how old is that? We made that in the middle 80s, I think.
Yeah, about 85-ish.
Yes, those are things that can happen to this bridge. Yeah. But we also have thousands out there that no one's complained about.
Well,
so there you go.
Maybe as unhappy with people can be about the 2500. The Killer, not this one, because this is a special 7-string one that Gary made for him. Thank you, Gary. The Killer is a drop-in replacement for the 2500. Now, we don't make the Killer, and we never will again because it's too expensive, but you can find them used all the time. And if you've got a 2500 and you absolutely hate it, go get yourself a Killer. They're cheap used right now, but I don't think they will be for long because this is such a good bridge. A Killer has the same stud spacing, which is called the drive. has the same. A Killer has the same drive as a 2500, which is the same drive as the outer two holes of an American 6-hole Strat. Kahler was the original trem unit used on the Washburn N4 Davies production area, and most of these guitars are kept with it. After the production went to Chicago, the N4s were loaded with the OFR. That is true. I'm going to be really careful here on what I say, but I will say that I raced here probably a little faster than I should, because I got here 2 days before Extreme came in concert. And one of the very first official things I did as a Kahler employee was take Nuno's Guitar Tech a bunch of Steeler parts. Nuno still uses the Steeler on his guitars that he personally plays. Met the band. They were great. I do have to say that there is one guitar that Nuno has that did not have a Kahler Steeler on it that I saw that had actually an FU tone on it, and that was his Eddie Van Halen tribute guitar. And I suspect the reason that it had the FU is because it's metric, and therefore he could put the EVH detune on it. Yep. Can't do that on a Steeler; it won't fit. How do you think I did there, Gary? I didn't say anything that'd make rock stars mad, huh?
I'll pause for a moment. Thank you. Though they were very kind to us at the concert. We had backstage passes, and we were able to talk to Nuno himself. Yeah. And he really likes the bridges. He's played it forever, and he needed some parts. He took care of that with his rep, and we've been friends with his rep. You have?
Oh yeah. His tech, who's actually George Lynch's tech too.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I meant tech.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, and I've been talking to the representative, their agent, about a number of things that maybe we can do in the future. Everything is unknown at this point, but what a great band! What a hell of a player! I mean, he is some kind of player, but it's really refreshing. He plays that Steeler as all and never replaced the knives.
Nope.
How many years? He played about 30-some years, I think.
Gosh, well, let's see. He's been playing the early 90s was when they came into prominence. So, late 80s.
Yep, it had to be.
He also has in that guitar some other innovations. It's got a smaller than usual body. And it has this thing called the Stevens Extended Cutaway. And I'm not going to go into what that is, but I was really, really impressed when a production guitar came out with that, because that came from a very little luthier shop in Seattle. So I knew what it was before I saw him do it. And I got to ask him about it, and he was very cool in explaining everything.
Well, it was a nice evening.
Nuno's a great guy. Can't say enough about him. That's good.
He's very kind to me. And, maybe it's only because I'm an old guy now, but he isn't so young himself.
Well, hey,
he's been at it a long time.
There's a lot. The whole band, actually, they were really cool to you. And I mean, actually, I was standing there backstage, just kind of with a big smile on my face, over by the Guitar Tech section, completely alone. And Gary Cherone, the lead singer of the band, kind of made eye contact with me, and he was kind of like, who's this guy that I've never seen but obviously belongs here? So he came over, gave me a fist bump, and just started talking to me just like one of the boys.
And I think Living Color opened for them.
Oh my God. I was so excited to meet the guys in Living Color, and they were amazing.
They were neat people.
They were really, really so. I went over to Corey Glover and looked at him, and I was like, man, once again, just me and Corey Glover backstage, and I looked over and he saw that I made eye contact with him, and I was like, oh, damn it. Well, if I'm going to do this, now's the time. And I walked over and went, man, I saw you guys on the Time's Up tour, and boy, oh boy, and it was just so great. And I remember this thing and that thing, and man, and he was like, well, that's awesome. What are you doing here? Oh, well, I did Kahler, and this, I've got something I'd love to show Vernon. And right after that conversation with Gary Cherone, man, I just felt like I was about 20 feet tall and bulletproof. And then all of a sudden, here comes Corey Glover and Vernon Reed, and Corey Glover goes, "Hey, Vernon, this is Eddie. He works with Kaler. He's got something he'd really like to show you." And I was just like, oh, kill me now. It's never going to get any better.
Yeah.
Rollers on the Kaler can't be good for sustain. That sounds like speculation to me. This sounds like somebody who has never seen a Kaler, and he's heard his uncle sit there and go like, "Kalers suck." And so he's like, "I love my uncle, so therefore I'm just going to parrot this. Kalers suck. The rollers can't be good. The rollers are freaking great."
They really are, because they don't lose contact with the witness point. And now, here again, they got to be properly set up.
That is, yes. Okay, so let's talk about that for a minute. Can the rollers freeze? Absolutely.
Yep.
They can, and they will. If you excessively sweat, if you're a particularly filthy person that never cleans your bridge, if you never, just a couple drops of 3-in-1 oil every now and then and spinning the thing will take care of that problem. Preventative maintenance goes a long way. If you don't do it, then it's going to be a lot more difficult, and you're going to wish you did.
I just like to say that the reason I use a roller is because the string never leaves the witness point. Therefore, you're going to hear the growl when the harmonic gives up, because it don't like to give up. I mean, it wants to stay when it's in tune.
Yes.
And each string is in tune with itself, and you got the whole thing intonated right. You'll hear that breakup. It'll growl at you on the way down.
When we talk about rollers, okay, there are 3 different rollers you can use with a Kaler. Originally, it was just brass, correct?
Yes.
But pretty soon thereafter, you also introduced steel.
We introduced stainless steel. Yep.
And now there's also Teflon glass.
Yep, composite.
Okay, so between those 3, you're going to have whatever tonal option you want. The brass one focuses the lower harmonic more. The steel one, the upper harmonic. The Teflon glass one is just like super, super trebly.
Yeah. I might say that Kerry King of Slayer uses a 2315, which is a brass cam and steel rollers.
Brass cam, steel rollers.
Because he thinks he gets the right kind of sound he wants off of it. And it is a little different rather than brass to brass.
Yep.
Because in the beginning, that's all we had was brass to brass.
Yeah.
Then he switched brass to steel.
Well, that's my favorite combination, too. That Jeff Hanneman right behind you as well is the same thing, brass cam, steel rollers.
Yep.
The big difference between Hanneman and Kerry King is that Kerry King's have the regular springs, whereas Hanneman has the heavy springs on his.
He did.
So,
bless his soul.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I don't know if Jeff Hanneman would actually appreciate bless his soul. Yeah, no. He'd probably be like, "I am where I intended to wind up."
That's right. Intense.
I'll tell you what, man. I am so sad that I never got to see Slayer. They were such a big deal to me when I was a kid. One day we will have a Slayer specific thing, probably several. Sticking with the Slayer thing, listen to Rain in Blood and tell me that the rollers aren't good for sustain. That is the greatest thrash metal album of all time, and nothing but a Kaler was used on it by both guitar players, nothing else. And you know what? That sustained for days.
Yes, it did.
We'll get just a little more technical about this. So, focusing on the single locking and rollers thing, and I'll even go one further, and we'll throw in the behind the string lock, or the behind the nut lock here, is that is all crucial to the design of the Kaler, because with a double locking fulcrum, or any double locking bridge, the string is one length, and that's that. And that's all that it is. You have one length of string. You're either stretching that string or you're dumping that string, and that's that. So with the Kaler, you are actually either lengthening or shortening the string, and those rollers are letting the witness point stay there the entire time to not only keep but enhance the harmonic breakup. And that works best with the behind the string lock, because then you have more string to play with. But most people would not notice the difference if they used what you would think of as a traditional Floyd Rose locking nut. However, we will get into the string lock versus the locking nut here a little bit later. Would you say I pretty much nailed that, Gary? You got anything to add?
I think so. I just want the folks to know that it's your option. We have string locks. We have locking nuts, all of that. And
we have fulcrums.
We have fulcrums as well. So it's your choice.
Yeah. We have 6-hole classic Fender style bridges.
Yep.
We got it all. Love my Floyds, but in Kahler's defense, the Kahlers I did own were equally as good. I would not turn down a guitar with a Floyd or a Kahler. I love this answer.
Yeah, I mean, that's good. It makes a lot of sense.
It really does. You know, the way that I look at a guitar, if you're a musician, you know, you're creating art. And, you know, if you liken that to being a painter, you know, then the bridge is kind of like a brush, you know, so you can't paint a good painting, I don't think, with only one brush, or it'd be really hard. You know, how are you going to do the fine things with a big fat brush? How are you going to do like the things that need to cover a lot of area with this little teeny tiny fine brush? The cam, which is not my favorite. I'm a fulcrum guy. And Gary knows this. And now, my favorite fulcrum is the Steeler Professional with an auto latch on it, though, you know, but we'll get to that later.
You might find that really strange, what you just said.
What's that?
And why you're here and you prefer fulcrums.
Yeah.
That's because when you were a kid, you did prefer a fulcrum.
Well,
and you went out and that's what you played. And I think you make a very good point.
That's true.
Well, it is true. And so the people that have been used to playing fulcrums all their life, you know, and now want to play a Kahler, it's a different experience. It really is.
It really is. But
Yes.
but you know what? It's not better or worse. It's just different.
It's different.
Now, I will say this too. Like in the defense of all locking bridges everywhere. So I turned 20 in 1990, and I am from Seattle. So I was in the general Seattle area when the 90s and grunge came along, and everybody hated anything that you had to lock anywhere.
Yep.
Except for Jerry Cantrell. But everybody else.
Yep.
So the Kahler survived that. But the thing is that for a while there, everybody hated the Floyd Rose. And I mean hatred. I mean like vehement hatred. And you know what? I mean, when Floyd Rose came up with that thing, he was actually living in Seattle. So now nobody is 100% sure who got the very first Floyd Rose for sale. It was probably either Brad Gillis or Randy Hansen, but it was more than likely one of those two guys. It was not Eddie Van Halen, but he got one of the early ones too. The thing is, though, is that Randy Hansen is a Jimi Hendrix impersonator from Seattle who is both white and right-handed.
Oh, my God.
Yet he pulls it off, you know, and he's still going strong to this day. I would love to have Randy Hansen on here. Let's talk. Who has played a Kahler?
Yes, he has.
This is the funny thing that I find about, like, non-pros. And when I say that, I am putting myself at the very front of non-pros with their biases.
If you're a non-pro, why are you even here?
I am really good at faking out old people.
I see. Well, thanks a lot.
You're welcome. When you're, at least for me, when I was a kid, when I would look at something that my favorite, you know, player would do or use or whatever, I would figure that, well, if it's not this, then he doesn't like it, so he must hate it, so I need to hate it too. And then if there was something that was a million miles away from what he used, then he must really hate it, so I need to hate it too. So if you're a big fan of Eddie Van Halen or, You know, like in my case, Steve Vai was and is my favorite guitar player.
And he used to play Kaler.
He sure did.
Before he went with Ibanez.
Yeah. Well, Steve had like all kinds of different stuff.
He did. He did.
Probably his first double locking thing was more than likely the Floyd Rose that went on his very first Fender Strat.
Okay.
He carved that thing up when he was with Frank Zappa, and I mean, his mentor was Frank Zappa. You know, I mean, enough said. I love Kaler's almost as much as Floyd's. That's okay. Good.
Yeah, no, he could have said, I love Floyd's almost as much as Kaler's.
Well, we want honesty here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. That's good. We appreciate that.
Yeah. This one right here actually came from the Kaler Facebook page. This is a guy who plays Kaler's. Remember, I asked, why do you think Kaler's lost the Tremolo Wars? Okay, so string gauge issues, having to install larger hooks to accommodate the heavier strings for one, more moving parts, the string lock behind the nut. If you take the unit, you have to take the unit completely off the body to upgrade or replace the springs. Rollers seize up. I know that sounds like a lot of negatives, but there are a lot of good aspects of the Kaler as well. My 2 cents. Heavy springs and Teflon rollers are the way to go for me. That's what worked for a Floyd Rose style locking nut. Once again, the heavy springs. So that tells me that this guy likes more of a traditional fulcrum kind of feel. The Teflon rollers. Teflon's a composite, unlike a metal, probably takes a lot less lubricating and things like that to keep them spinning. So, yeah, that sounds like a pretty bulletproof thing. You add the heavy bar, and it's going to feel a lot like a Floyd.
I might add, don't interrupt you.
Sure.
I might add, though, you've got the cam, you can add the heavy bar.
Yes.
And the larger string hooks, because if he's playing a 1348 or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah, you need a larger string hook. So anybody that's ordering a Kaler bridge, let's say, you can do that on the website.
Yes.
And then just send us an email or make a note that what string size you're using, and we'll automatically put in the bigger hook for you.
And the wider rollers.
And the wider roller. We will.
Yeah, we'll do that for you. And now that's on the 2300 and the 2200.
Yep.
The hybrids are just kind of a one-size-fits-all, available in all the colors, but they're brass on brass, and that's the way they are. Quantity dictates price, and that's why those are one way, and that's that. And that's also why the professional is $100 more. But
and also the professional is custom. I mean,
yeah,
you can have it custom, even although we have different numbers for the different styles. You can even custom it beyond that at no additional cost.
Yes, no additional. So if you want all 3 different kinds of rollers, and you want them checkerboarded on there to where it goes Teflon, steel, brass, that wouldn't make a lot of sense, but we'll do it.
We'll do it.
We'll do it. Now, something like brass on your 2 higher strings, because, maybe you want to focus more on the lower harmonic for those, and then steel for the middle 2 because it's middle, and then Teflon glass for the lower 2 because you want them to be super zingy. That would make some sense. I should try that. That'd be a neat experiment.
Try that, maybe.
I will. I will
show them in a later podcast. What differences are.
We'll do that. The string lock behind the nut. We'll talk about that a little. If you've got a plastic nut that isn't cut right or something like that, you're going to have binding issues, and that's not just a Kaler. That's anything. So even if it's a hardtail, every time you bend the string, every time you do that, you are moving the string, and you're pulling it a little bit out of the nut, and you're pulling it a little bit off of the bridge saddle. That's why the roller works so good, because it just rolls with that movement. A locking nut just takes all that out of the equation. When people say the Kaler locking nut, 99 times out of 100, they're talking about the behind the nut string lock.
It's not a nut, it's a string lock.
Yeah, it's not a nut. Now, Kaler does make a locking nut that is really, really good. It's every single slot in the thing is a different width, height, and radius to accommodate the different gauges of strings. Not only that, but it's got a built-in string director, and we offer them in a bunch of different radiuses from 6 to 10 string, right?
Yeah.
6 to 10. So there are a lot of options for that locking nut. In addition, it's not held in by 2 screws like everybody else's. It's held in by 4.
That's right.
And the thing about, you want to talk about tuning stability, a lot of the times when people talk about tuning stability problems on their the generic term Floyd Rose, they might be talking about an edge or a
right.
Schaller or whatever. A common problem is that their locking nut has gotten loose and it's actually moving, and that's why the extra 2 screws are there to try to ensure that doesn't happen.
Those pads will get a little worn, and then they'll have to be replaced on anybody's locking nut.
That is true. And not only that, but the Kahler locking nut pads, they have a really tight tolerance. They only go in one way too. So you can't put them in backwards or upside down or wrong. It's a pretty good setup. But you know what? All that being said, the behind the nut string lock works just fine. You know what? It all depends on how well you maintain your guitar.
Well, it also depends on how much work you want to do on it. Because it's taking the present nut off and then putting on a different nut.
That's true.
That's a big job, as opposed to putting a string lock behind the nut.
Well, not only that, but the string lock, if you decide you don't like it, you can pull it out, and there are only 4 little holes from those 4 little screws. Right. Okay. Whereas if you decide that you don't like the locking nut, well, get a new neck.
That's right.
We're talking about actually building a double neck guitar that would have identical setups. The only difference would be that one of the bridges, and these would both be 2300s. One of them would have just the regular Kahler stuff behind the string lock, regular bar, regular springs. And then the other one would have the Kahler locking nut, the heavy springs, and the heavy bar. So that you could try both out on one guitar simultaneously. Nothing else would be different. And we're going to try our damnedest to figure out a way to have such a beast somewhere where people can actually try it.
Yeah, we're looking into that now.
So back when I first started playing was in the mid to late 90s, and I actually preferred them being Kahlers.
Who is this?
Patrick, I'm not even going to try to pronounce the last name.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let's see. I actually preferred them because they were on a lot of guitars that were great guitars, but they were too metal for the grunge crowd, and everybody kept on jumping on the bandwagon, loved them. They were smooth, accurate, and sounded great, and were always reliable. Well, the smooth part leads me to believe he is definitely talking about a Kahler. However, as I grew as a musician, Kahler-equipped guitars were getting hard to come by. And by the 2000s, bought more guitars with the Floyd-type trims. My first real new guitar was a USA Jackson with a real Floyd. It took some getting used to, but I adapted, I think, honestly, and I know it was after the Trem Wars. But for me, later on, it was what I could get in a newer guitar. I still have that one guitar with the Kahler. I'll never let it go, partly because it's an 85 USA King V, and because it was my first real guitar that was actual USA quality.
It just costs more money to make it in the U.S.
Yeah.
And that's why U.S., for the most part, 100% made in the U.S. guitars. What do they start at?
Jeez. $2,500 for a cheap one.
$2,500, about that.
Yeah.
Now, yes, what would an import, let's say, from that same guitar maker, what would you sell a guitar for?
Under $1,000.
It'd be under $1,000.
Yep.
And I'll tell you what, American manufacturing has got to improve. We got too many homeless out there on the street, and believe me, those folks could work in a factory. And as I said before, everybody can drill a hole.
Hey, everybody can push a broom.
They can push a broom too. And yeah, that might be a minimum wage, but minimum wage now, what is it, 8 something or something?
So
like that?
I mean, they're fighting to make it like 20.
Yeah, I mean,
or
really,
something.
yeah. And we got tool makers that are making $26, $28 an hour.
Yeah.
So I mean, people got to get paid, and our margins really are very slim on this stuff that we sell.
I'll cut it out if you want me to, but can I say that you stopped taking any kind of pay from this company years ago?
I did.
Yeah.
I live off my Social Security, believe it or not.
Yeah. And why? So that you know, we don't have to raise prices. Price of brass has gone up how many times since?
About 3-4 times in the last 10 years.
Yeah. You know, but the price of the Kaler bridges remains the same for as long as you can.
Even cutters and in mills and drills and all of the kind of thing, all the tools we have to use have almost doubled or tripled.
There are no executives at this company. We all do a lot of everything as far as, you know, the people in the office. Some of us do more than others, but there are only 3 office people at Kaler. Yep. There are only 3. You now, with at the machine shop, what, maybe another 2?
Well, there's 2 as far as
so
booking people or accounting people and stuff like that.
You could not call us executives. And you know what? Our lowest paid machinist makes more than me. And he should, because I have a fun job that is not...
Well, wait a minute. We could pay you less.
Could you?
Yeah, sure. We'll pay you less.
Oh, boy.
Hell, you announce this on TV. Why not?
Could I pay you for the privilege of working here?
That would work, too.
Okay, yeah. Great. Checks in the mail.
That way we can always keep the price down.
There you go. You guys actually, I'll tell you this. I retired as a Class 1 commercial deep sea diver, and I still could be doing that if I wanted to and probably make at least double what I make here. But I chose to come here because I believe in keeping guitar things made here, and I believe in the product. I wouldn't come work for a company and take a horrendous pay cut if I thought it was a crappy product, you know, and I just want you guys to think about that for a minute.
Well, it's also an innovative product. You know, we don't only make 6 strings. We make 7, 8, 9s, and 10s.
Multi-scale and regular.
Multi-scale and regular. We make all the bass bridges, all the way from actually, a guy actually had me make him a 3-string one time. I thought, I don't know what he's doing with this.
That is so funny.
But anyway.
That's awesome.
But anyway, we go from a 4 all the way up to an 8, and then also a piccolo bass and a baritone as well. So we're using our expertise to expand the line in different ways. Maybe it's niches where people aren't, but because we have that expertise to do that, but it also takes capital and it takes cash flow.
It really does. And I just want to say, too, that, I mean, we never rest. We're constantly doing neat stuff. And one of the coolest things, before I even came to work here, I ran an idea past Gary, and we started developing it before I came to work here, and it's almost done. And I can't say what it is, but hopefully before the end of the year.
Yeah, we'll get it before the end of the year.
Yeah, and you know what, you guys? I truly believe that this thing is going to revolutionize everything, and it's made to be retrofittable on just about any double-locking drum out there. So you don't have to play a Kaler to benefit from this thing that Gary and I have kind of co-created. And on top of that, we do neat, fun, one-off things. We got a 7-string bass that has 3 fretless strings on it, and we're going to put a freaking whammy bar on that thing. I can't wait.
We are.
And if you're a Kaler customer, you already know that if you want something fancy, all you have to do is, you know, send an email, say what you want, and we'll make you something really custom.
We have a gentleman right now that wants to buy a 7-string bass multi-scale.
Yeah.
Now, that's interesting. although we have the parts, we don't have the spacing for the right intonation. So I've got to come up with it, some way to make that work. We haven't figured that one out yet.
Price. Price is why you lost the shoe. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, price.
100%. 100%.
Price to quality.
Yeah.
And,
How are those of us who live in America? Because some people are going to watch this and they're going to be over in, different parts of Europe or wherever, and they're going to go like, I don't really care about keeping Americans working, or maybe they do. Everything costs money. Even cheap counterfeits cost money to make. So they've got to choose where to put their money. And, like on, say, like a counterfeit guitar, for example, all the money's going to go into making it look pretty. None of it's going to go into making it stable. There's another expensive hobby that I have, and that would be cycling, both mountain and road biking. They're both very niche markets that can get ridiculously expensive very, very fast. The dirty trick that they do on bicycles is the sexiest part of the bicycle is the rear derailleur. It's got logos, it's pretty, whatever. And that's where they'll put all their money, even though all the performance is in the shifters. Well, the shifters are not sexy. So they don't put it, the shifters are almost always downgraded. And, you've got your performance would increase if they put less money in the rear derailleur and more in the shifters. Well, it's kind of the same thing with guitars. The sexiest part of the guitar is the pickups, right? That with that Seymour Duncan logo or that DiMarzio logo on there or the Fishman logo. Nobody cares about the bridge anymore. Just slap a Floyd Rose on it. Who cares? Well, which one? No, nobody cares. They care about the pickups. Didn't you hear?
I didn't think so. I'm a bridge maker. I don't give a damn about the people that care more about the pickup.
What I always go for first in any instrument is mechanical stability. Okay. And then after that, I'm worried about the tone because I can make it sound pretty close to whatever I want by manipulating
I think you're
things.
saying all the people listening to this can make it sound closer to
You
what
can
they want.
Glenn Fricker has proved time and time again, especially with heavy metal, that if you're jacking everything up as high gain as humanly possible, then the pickups, I will say I feel they make a bit of a difference, but not enough to where you're going to be able to tell in a mix and everything else. So mechanical stability to me, is it going to stay in tune? Okay. Is it going to do this or that? But the thing is with the bridge is so much more important for the overall performance of the guitar.
Well, that's why we're talking about them.
Yeah, but it's something that's just kind of got shoved to the back ever since everybody was all like, oh, I don't care about the brand. Oh, what pickups does it have? Here's the thing. Just like with bicycles, the end user is going to do the upgrades that mean the most to them. Yeah, OEMs don't put Kahlers on their guitars. And for those that don't know, OEM is original equipment manufacturer. So your guitar companies, they're not buying Kahlers like they used to because they want to save as much money as they can because it's good for their profit.
They'll buy a bridge at half the price, put it on there.
Yeah.
And then promote it and use their money for promotion.
It works the same way with the Floyd Rose. I mean, most people, when they buy a guitar, they're not getting a guitar with a OFR on it. They're getting, probably a Floyd Rose 1000, maybe a special, maybe a Jackson branded thing, which you may or may not know is pretty much a Floyd Rose Pro knockoff.
Whatever it is.
Well, it is, but everybody just throws it all under the one moniker Floyd Rose. But then the thing is, that as parts start failing for these cheaper ones that are not user serviceable, now you have to buy a whole new bridge. The only real issue is how do we get these things in your hands so that you can try them out? Because so many people that badmouth Kahlers have never even held one in their hands. All right, short story. The story of Floyd versus Kahlers, basically the Fulcrum versus the Cam Tremolo Tech. Cams have better performance. Fulcrums have a more familiar feel. I think that the Kahler system actually, I would throw the Washburn Wonder Bar and the Steinberger systems into it as well, were just too far ahead of their time. This was before issues with string height and intonation adjustment, which, let's be honest, are just a huge pain in the ass with the Kahler 2300. That said, the 2300 and the Kahler as a company can be saved. Oh, Gary, you can be saved. You can be redeemed in the blood of the Lamb. I will be sending an email to you shortly with more details. Well, thank God for you.
Well, I don't know. You know what Tony has to say there? He said it. I think he believes it. I just have to say that Wonder Bar.
Oh.
Well, the Wonder Bar was just an absolute rip-off of a Kahler. And Kind of, you bet.
Kinda.
Along with Takeuchi and the rest of them
well,
in Japan.
The Wonder Bar is more like a appearance ripoff because it doesn't perform even remotely the same.
Yeah.
And this is an important thing to say about the Wonder Bar. For those of you who don't know, I'm sure my old buddy Gil there already knows this, but the Wonder Bar actually was made by 3 different factories. And one of them called it the Wonder Bar, one of them called it the Shift, and one of them called it the Answer. And all 3 of them look the same, but they're branded differently, and their internal parts are different.
Well, the Shift is completely different.
Yeah. If you try to put that torsion bar from like a Shift into a Wonder Bar or vice versa or whatever, it won't fit because it's different. Here's the 2300 right here. And this thing is ridiculously simple to adjust. You've got 1 screw for the string height, right? And that's per saddle. You've got 1 screw down here to where you can adjust your string spacing. You've got 1 screw right here to where you adjust your intonation. That's it. That's it. Now, if you were to compare this to a Fender bridge, you have a screw in the back for intonation. So 1 screw on the Kahler, 1 screw there. You've got 2 screws to adjust height. So the Kahler only has 1.
It's different than with a saddle with a spring on it because you got a spring on it.
Exactly.
It's going to move all over. No matter if it has 2 screws, 2 tracks, or whatever, and we used to make those all the time.
Yeah, the old Gibson ones, the first 500 and the Flyers
had that.
They had that, and you changed to this fork setup here because it is more stable. Because
it's a locking saddle.
Yeah,
in other words, it's going to stay straight ahead, and unless you don't get the intonation screw, the Phillips screw, tight enough,
you adjust this all with the lock screw engaged, and then you just adjust this screw right here, the load lever.
You don't have to go to the back of the guitar.
No, you don't have to flip your guitar over,
and you're not cutting all that wood out of your guitar either.
Yeah, and you just sit there and you just adjust the thing, and you get it. These things are infinitely more simple to adjust. Hello, Eddie. Responding to your video, the words are one step by step, and for many reasons, including circumstances. First of all, I prefer Kahler. I don't know why. Well, okay, you don't have to. Maybe because my beloved guitar has a Kahler. Maybe because I live in Rio de Janeiro and I feel the Kahler detunes less with weather variations. Maybe it's because I can bend a string and play another without a sensible detune and not have to block the bridge. But these would be why Kahler would win, and Floyd won the market war. So I think the reason that I stated everything, Eddie Van Halen participated in the creation of the Floyd Rose and promoted it very, very much. Van Halen is a legend. Van Halen is the reason I started playing guitar again. It's like a God pointing a finger at the correct choice. You know what? I cannot fault that logic at all. Floyd Rose already had a market share when Kahler happened. That is incorrect. I feel Kahler was actually doing much more before Floyd came in and just went bang.
But you see, he started out with a Fulcrum bridge like a Fender bridge.
That's right.
And people were more familiar with a Fender bridge, for God's sakes, than they ever were with a Kahler. So as a result, Fulcrum bridges were around forever before we ever got started.
It's much easier to copycat a Floyd Rose than a Kaler. It brought a ton of cheap Floyd Roses and expanded the market. I had a Japanese and Korean Floyd Rose before a German Floyd Rose. I bought the cheap one and then wanted the more expensive one because the cheap one was horrible. Because we can find so many Floyd Roses, it's easy to buy replacement parts all over the world. When I screwed one of my Floyd Rose saddles, I just bought a cheap one arriving the next day, and then think of buying the original someday. One string hook of my Kaler broke, and I'm waiting a long time to receive it from the USA. This is my line of reasoning. We got over 100 of these things, so I think that it's time for us to just cut to the real reason, okay? And the real reason, I believe, that Kaler, if you want to put it, lost the Tremolo Wars, although it's a pretty strong argument. You know, you don't see them on OEMs anymore and things like that. This one kind of nails it. It's that there are a zillion different things out there that look like a Floyd Rose, and everybody refers to them as a Floyd Rose, and Floyd Rose granted just an unreal amount of licenses. And Gary, you've never, ever issued a license.
I've never issued a license because I've always wanted a factory, and maybe that's my downfall.
Financially, yes, absolutely, 100%.
I mean, you could have licensed it just like Rose did. And I made the decision to go to Japan and stop the counterfeits. Mm-hmm. And one of the first things they wanted was a license. I said, no, I'm not going to license because I have a factory in the United States. I was very proud to have a factory in the United States. We obviously hire Americans to do that. And maybe it's because I'm from Nebraska. I don't know. Maybe I'm a little stupid. But the fact is, I still want to do that. And either you're going to buy offshore cheaper or you're going to buy American. It's as simple as that.
You know what? I'm good at overcomplicating simple things. So let me just kind of throw my 2 cents in here because I know a lot of this story. And if I say anything that works out to where I shouldn't have said it, I'll just edit it out. The very first counterfeiter was Takeuchi. Yes?
To my knowledge.
To your knowledge. So you went over to Japan and you sued him and the cease and desist and all that kind of stuff. Now,
one under Japanese law.
Yes, one under Japanese law. But
first one in the music business to do that, as far as I know.
Here's the thing about that, though, is that all that was stop making it. There was no kind of financial compensation for damage to your business.
Nope.
If you wanted to, you could have said, you keep going, Takeuchi, but you're going to pay a licensing fee.
Sure.
You could have easily done that. When you were over there suing Takeuchi, you also went and you visited a handful of Japanese OEMs who had already made a Kaler-style bridge, and they wanted to pay a license fee. They said that they would gladly pay a license fee.
Well, they would come to a meeting and say, this is our Kaler.
This is our Kaler.
Yeah, so in other words, they're seeking a license.
They're seeking a license. So the thing is that you could have done the same exact thing.
Well, I could have done it first.
You could have done it first, and if you would have done it first, then there is a chance that Eddie Van Halen would have been playing a Kaler instead of a Floyd Rose. One thing that I have absolutely no problem speculating on and believing wholeheartedly is that if you would have granted licenses, then the price issue would not have been a thing.
No, there'd be no price issue.
And then you would still see guitars, but like right now, we're seeing a lot of guitars that now have fulcrums on them that no longer say licensed under Floyd Rose because that patent is expired.
Well, they can't use the Floyd Rose name, just like we don't either.
Yeah.
We're in that same category. That's why we have the Steelers for sale under Kaler.
Patriotically, the best decision you could have made. Financially, the worst decision you could have made.
Absolutely. And I lost members of my family because they disagreed with my decisions. Because you refused to take the money and run. I just absolutely wanted to make it in the U.S. There's another reason for that.
Okay.
You know, I have about 20 really core employees.
Yes.
And these people, they have worked for me from 45 years to over 30 years. They have families to support. Their children are working for us, and right on down the line. And they're Americans. I want to see them thrive. I want their children to thrive, their children to thrive.
Unlike the car companies and things like that got bailouts and subsidies and things like that, you never got anything like that.
Yeah, that's amazing.
You're not too big to fail.
No,
you're just right to fail.
Are we going to bail out a damn little criminal maker, for God's sake?
That's right. You're in the Goldilocks zone. No, you're just right to fail.
I know.
There were a couple other of these that were really, really good. This one's actually a really great point. I like the way a Floyd Rose knife edge pivot feels compared to a hinge, like a Kahler or an Ibanez ZR tremolo. First off, a hinge is more like a Floyd Rose. It's more like a Floyd Rose. Are you familiar with this Ibanez ZR that they're talking about?
No, I'm not.
Okay, I'll show you one. I have one, and I bought this guitar just to check it out. And it's an interesting thing. If you prefer it, that's reason enough.
No, that's his choice.
That's reason enough.
When he talks about the edge, he's feeling something there, and God, that's his personal right. He can do what he wants.
Absolutely. Let me see. Oh. Here we go. I heard that they just got buried in legal expense, and not even from Floyd Rose, but other parties. I'm looking forward to the next video, though. Personally, I much prefer a Kahler's fixed saddle so that you never unintentionally do a mini dive bomb. But I like the Floyd stiffer feel. Since KK Downing was my whammy bar inspiration, I showed neither of them any mercy. And they both stay in tune well. Changing strings on a Floyd and snipping off the ball ends absolutely blows goats, though. Props for saying blows goats. Party on Wayne, party on Garth. Now that I'm middle-aged, I just take the thing in and pay someone else to deal with that pain in the ass. And the Kahler saddles never move. True. This right here is why I have had many conversations with many people who say, I don't like trems at all. Because. And it always turns out to be the same thing. They can't figure out where the sweet spot is on a floating double locking bridge to where they don't bend the thing out of tune when they're palm muting, chugging along, whatever.
Sure, I got it.
Kahler cam-based bridges do not have this problem. You could sit there and try with all your might. You're not going to bend that thing out of tune by palm muting. You can palm mute every bit as easy on a Kahler as you can on a fixed bridge. You can do all that stuff. You can even make a Kahler cam-based, the newer ones. Not the ones from the 80s, but the newer ones have a screw. You can make it fixed. And you can do that if you want, but still have the benefit of, say, a steel cam and Teflon rollers or whatever combination. The snipping of the ball ends and things like that. Yeah, no.
Well, that's on that, Floyd. We have the professional fulcrum here that just put it in the back of it and leave the ball on, lock it off, and you're ready to go. And if you want a fixed bridge, get an auto latch with it, and you can fix it anytime you want to automatically.
Here's a professional right here. Now, this looks very Floydy, and rightfully so, but it's not Floyd Rose-like at all. And this is double locking, but you don't cut the ball ends off. They actually stick out the end here. And believe it or not, Gary, I've had a couple people complain about that. I want to see the ball ends. Why don't you make a sheath to cover it? And it's like, because that'd make it cost more, and it's just kind of silly. But yeah, you lock it down here, and then you lock it at the nut, and it works great. This one has the auto latch feature, which, yes, everybody, I know I've got to make that install video. Buried in legal expenses, and not even from Floyd Rose. I would say that Floyd Rose.
Well, we all have other legal expenses.
Oh boy,
I'm not going to get into that because it's yes, we were buried in legal expenses.
Yes,
and that was caused by the so-called tremolo wars that went on and on. But we all have other legal expenses. But believe me, the Floyd Rose wars were 90% of it.
I've always wondered about Kahler. Seems like the perfect trem system at face value. Quick and easy saddle adjustments, locking point to turn it into a fixed bridge, etc. I do not have any experience with the Kaler system, only Floyd Rose. When the next video comes up, someone please let me know. I'm genuinely curious about this. Once again, it's all about getting these things into your hands so that you can feel it. And you know what? When I was a much younger and much more opinionated person, I hated Fender guitars, if you can believe that. I thought they were just dumb looking. I thought that they played like crap. I thought that they sounded like crap. I did not like the Fender Strat. I thought it was just a grandpa guitar.
Okay.
Did not like it. And then one day I played one that was actually set up right, and it blew my mind.
Good.
Setup is everything. You could have a Ferrari that has one fouled spark plug, and it is going to run like crap.
Well, now, you've done setups on Kaler.
Many.
Well, you ought to fix it so that he gets a link to it.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? Probably the most thorough one is the one with the Lita Ford Warlock. The thing is, though, is that you can watch something on the internet, you can read about it, you can hear it, but unless you actually touch it with your hands, you don't know. You're just speculating.
Well, he's not going to be able to do that. But the best thing we can do, if he comes to Vegas, sure, we can do that.
That's the whole thing, too, is that we are very interactive with you guys. If you want to come here to Las Vegas and you want to come and see the facility and you want to try out like at any number of Kalers, drop me a line, Eddie@KalerUSA.com. Also, you guys, if you have any ideas about how to actually do something that's a little bit more economically realistic than, a clinic tour or something like that, please let us know. Let's just rapid fire this one. Floyd licensed their bridge, but Kaler didn't. We already covered that. That's yes. So that's, reason number one. Nailed it. The licensed version of the Floyd Rose made it cheaper for guitar manufacturers to add the Floyd Rose in their guitars instead of the Kaler.
That's right.
Nailed it. Kaler made a double locking fulcrum that infringed on Floyd Rose patents and Floyd Rose sued. No. Actually, you were granted those licenses when you won.
Well, let's put it that way. The court said that the way to settle this would be just give me a license, and they did.
More artists endorsed and started using Floyd Rose, which gave it more advertising and acceptance.
That's a good possibility.
Yeah, yep. Nailed it. True. People incorrectly tuned the Kaler bridge and blamed the bridges for not holding stable tuning.
I won't go along with that.
I will.
Really?
As a guitar tech, people incorrectly tuned the Kaler bridge. Incorrectly.
Yeah.
Yes. No, I as a guitar tech, I will say, nailed it. The string lock, the locking nut, seems to offer more tuning stability. A lot of the early Kaler-equipped guitars came with the string lock.
First of all, I want to say that he did a good job here.
He did a real good job.
With his 6 points and straight and to the point.
Oh, my God, yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. And
hey, look at his name, Diluted Reality.
I know.
That's awesome.
Oh, my God.
Let's just take a minute to talk the String Lock Pro, the locking nut. This is my own personal opinion as Eddie Kernan, the individual. The Kaler locking nut is the best locking nut I've ever come across. And I'm not saying that because I work here. I'm saying that because I've tried them all. Now I'm talking about the locking nut, not the string lock. Whenever I do a new build and it needs a locking nut, regardless of the bridge, my first locking nut choice is the Kaler locking nut. That's string locks. There's nothing wrong with them. It really depends on your nut material, how good your nut is cut, all that other kind of stuff. Then there's the String Lock Pro, and some people don't take the time to read the instructions, and they over-tighten it and they break it.
That doesn't happen that much.
It doesn't.
But it does happen.
Yeah.
You just got to read those instructions. Get it down.
You really do. But I got to tell you, properly cut nut and you lubricate it too, unless you've got a graphite or a self-lubricating nut of some kind. is really, really important. But the string lock works just fine. I bought guitars with Kahler because the band Slayer uses them. Damn right they do.
Yeah.
I noticed that later those guitars wouldn't stay in tune after tremolo bar uses. I finally started doing what other people suggested, which is solder the strings right above the ball where the winding is. It prevented the strings from changing tension due to the slip knots. Problem solved. Now I love my Kahlers, way more versatile than a Floyd Rose. I think that this is why people prefer Floyd Rose over Kahler. They don't notice this trick, so they go for what they believe is more stable.
He's probably right about that.
Yeah.
That the ball does move. And if you're making spaghetti out of those strings, they are going to move. And that's just how it is. Now, we had a whole line of strings that came out that were soldered, done by D'Addario.
Yes.
And we discontinued them a while back. I don't even remember why. But it had nothing to do with the string. It had nothing to do with D'Addario. It just had to do with people were starting to realize that they do it themselves and they buy their brand of strings they want.
Sure.
And they would do it. No, he makes a really good point there. And I'm glad that he found the solution.
I've heard of people doing like shrink tubing over where it winds. Soldering's definitely more common. Tends to be a bigger deal on your higher strings.
Yep.
You know, your unwound strings. We really need to see if D'Addario wants to fire those things back up.
We'll see how all this goes. Yep.
This will be the last one right here. Great idea for a video. I started playing guitar in 2000. So what I heard about Kahler was many years after they stopped production. Well, I think in 2000 you were in production, weren't you? Or were you?
I don't remember the exact date.
Okay.
But we were only out of production for about 8 months.
Of guitar bridges?
Guitar bridges. We were still selling the guitar bridges we had.
Oh, okay.
And then we went back and we went into the golf cut business for a while, and that all had to do with the $1,700,000 lawsuit.
This right here, for those of you who do not know, is what Kahler did for a little while after they got sued out of business. Started making Kahler golf clubs, and you made them for a bunch of other different people too, different brands. Like it's almost funny, like they'd license you to make their clubs. I don't know if that's the way you would put it, but I think it's kind of funny. The golf clubs were your solution to keep people employed.
Yes.
The main hypothesis was Kahler tremolos lacked sustain and had problems with staying in tune. Floyd Rose was simply better. Yes, that is what everybody thought, including me. Some told us it was difficult to find replacement parts for Kahler, therefore maintenance was a nightmare. I know some hate Floyd Roses because they are complex compared to a hardtail. I can only imagine how frustrated they would be with the Kahler.
One thing I really disagree with here, that he had a hard time getting parts. We've always supplied parts. We even had Whammy World at that time. Now, maybe there was a 6-month period there where we weren't as good as we should have been, but we were literally put out of business.
When it comes to parts, I will have to kind of agree and disagree at the same time, because it's always been easy to get parts directly from Kahler, but nobody's going to tell you that. So if you don't know that you can just get a hold of Kahler and say, like, I need one of these, well, then it can seem next to impossible to find them. Okay.
We spend hours around here sometimes trying to find a part for somebody that we made 45 years ago and discontinued. I mean, I'm very aware of that. I try the best we can, and I can tell you that somebody's looking for a $10 part, takes us $50 the time we find that part, put an envelope and send it to them. It takes time.
So remember, the point is, if they don't know that they can get Kahler parts from Kahler.
Well, now they know. So
now you know.
So let's go on here.
Okay.
He also is talking about endorsement. He's absolutely right. Go ahead.
Let's see. I also always had a feeling Kahler lost the tremolo war because of the lack of endorsement. The biggest rock stars had Kramer, Charvel, and Ibanez guitars, all they came with Floyd Rose or Floyd Rose licensed tremolos. Eddie Van Halen, Mick Mars, Richie Sambora, Steve Vai. I know that Mick Mars in the beginning was all Kahler.
So did Steve Vai.
While Kahler had mostly smaller stars and underdog players. There's a list of endorsees that would blow your mind, and I will find that and insert a slide here. Today, after owning several Kahler tremolo, I know that they are great. They hold tune if you got the special strings or you solder the ends. That, once again, yes. And the sustain is unbelievable. Once again, yes. Oh boy, the sustain is like magic. Kahlers are great, but they have a different feel. They're very smooth. Playing Eddie Van Halen or Steve Vai is very difficult with them because Floyd Rose are so stiff.
I want to say this about this man's name is, how would you pronounce that?
Croax.
Okay, Croax, thank you.
Yeah.
You're saying what you think in the first paragraphs, and I really appreciate that last paragraph because what you say there throughout is pretty good.
It's pretty spot on.
Yeah, it's pretty spot on, and for a period of time there, yeah, you may have had a hard time getting parts, but I realized that and got back into it as soon as I could, and by God, we're here now. And if you need parts, you let us know.
Once again, I'm just going to say that if you are somebody who already has a Kahler and you're like, oh, well, you know what? I mean, they're just not as stiff as a Floyd. If you really, really, really want to blow your own mind, order a set of the heavy springs and a heavy bar from us, and, just don't change your string gauge. What you do is you can just pop those ball ends, loosen up your strings, pop the ball ends out of the string hooks, take those 4 screws off, take all the tension off of the load lever, pull the regular springs, put the heavy ones on, put the thing back in, relock it, and then put your strings back on, adjust everything just so. Use the load lever to balance where the new tension is from the heavy springs. You'll probably have to come off of it a little bit, but your intonation will still be the same. Everything will still be the same. Then put the heavy bar in and marvel at how much that thing feels like a fulcrum. That was the last comment. Gary's got to leave, but I want to take a minute to say something to you guys right now. Now, we are not the biggest, and we never will be. And I'm fine with that because what we focus on instead is a direct link to the person that plays our stuff, the end user, you, watching this video. We have a recording studio in here. We want nothing more than to help up-and-coming regional players. We want to highlight you. We want to work with you and give you a place to show your stuff, man. That's why we got a recording studio with video capability in here. So, you know what? Reach out to us. And you don't have to be a big rock star. We will do everything we can to help you out. That is the difference between us and other bridge manufacturers. We're focused on the musician. And whether you play a cam or a fulcrum or even an old 6-hole bridge, we make all those things. And if you want to come here and you want to check those things out, well, by golly, all you have to do is just plan a trip to Vegas and email me at eddie@kahlerusa.com, and we'll set it up, and I will let you play whatever we've got an 8-string multi-scale guitar. We've got a 9-string guitar here. We've
got a 10-string bridges, too.
We do. We need a 10-string guitar to put that bridge on.
I got it.
I'm going to be putting a bridge on a couple different 7-string basses. One that's a traditional 7-string bass, and the other one is 4 strings fretted and 3 strings fretless. We don't shy away from the odd things because, to quote one of my favorite people in the world, without deviation from the norm, progress is not possible.
Well, we want to do what's right for the end user, and that's how it is. I just want to be as fair as I can to everybody here, and particularly to the Floyd Rose group. And we're trying to do what the right thing is here. If you got any comments, you let us know.
this right here, once again, was to open up a dialogue, to start a conversation, because you know what? We do not feel like, if you play brand X, then you're stupid and we're great and what. No, that's not it at all. I have about 130 guitars, and I guarantee you that if I were to count up all of them that have Kahlers versus everything else, the Kahlers would be a very, very small minority. But they're great bridges.
Oh, but the smaller the better.
That's not what she said.
Well, I don't know about that. I'm 86. All right.
Okay, well, I think that's good enough for now, man. There's plenty. And you know what? If you guys want to keep up the dialogue, maybe we'll do another one of these where we focus on other things. But, I mean, we had like over 100 comments. There's just too much to go through them all.
Well, and for those people that we didn't get to, I'll apologize for that. We just not enough time.
Well, there's not enough time. And who's going to sit here and watch a 10-hour podcast?
No, they're not.
No.
I hope they watch a 2-hour podcast. So.
Yeah.
Well, a 30-minute podcast.
Feels good to me. Okay, so until next time, I've been Eddie Kernan.
And I'm Gary Kahler, and I thank you for staying tuned.
See you next week.